Good morning, I'm Congressman Ritchie Torres, and I'm proud to be joined by two early intervention providers, Tracy Harris and Lacey Schweigert. We are here to sound the alarm about the catastrophic mismanagement of the New York State Early Intervention Program. So federal law requires states like New York to provide early intervention to children with disabilities under the age of 3, and to provide special education to children from ages 3 to 21. According to the Office of Special Education Programs within the Federal Department of Education, New York State has the worst early intervention program in the country, ranking 50 out of 50. The early intervention program exists to serve the most vulnerable children in our state, infants and toddlers with disabilities and developmental delays. There is no place in America that is failing the most vulnerable children more profoundly than the state of New York. The New York State Early Intervention Program has been plagued by decades of disinvestment, as well as decades of depressed reimbursement rates. Working class early intervention providers have been pleading the state of New York for an 11% reimbursement rate increase, only to have their pleas fall on deaf ears. The chronic underinvestment in early intervention and the chronic under-reimbursement of early intervention providers has led to severe workforce shortages, which in turn has led to ever-expanding waiting lists. There are 10,000 children with disabilities on the waiting list for early intervention services. Since 2020, the waiting list has grown by a staggering 500%. Even though the broken system of early intervention long predates Governor Kathy Hochul, the governor has broken the system even further to an extent that we have not seen before, plunging early intervention into a state of complete chaos, confusion, and crisis. So the New York State Early Intervention Program has undergone a transition from an old system known as NYEIS to a new system known as EI Hub. The old system, NYEIS, ended on October 8th, 2023. The new system, EI Hub, began on October 15th, 2023. The transition from NYEIS to EI Hub has been so poorly managed that it has led to service disruptions and payroll disruptions. There are children with disabilities who have not gotten federally mandated services. There are working class early intervention providers who have not gotten paid. Imagine being a working class early intervention provider who is unable to get paid and therefore unable to afford the cost of living, the cost of housing and transportation, the cost of groceries and gasoline, the cost of rent and maintenance and mortgage and utilities, the cost of Thanksgiving in November and the holidays in December. The economic insecurity that Governor Hochul has brought to early intervention providers is hard to overstate. Now, the New York State Comptroller wisely warned the governor not to end the old system without first ensuring that the new system was fully operational. The governor ignored that warning, causing a loss of services for children with disabilities and a loss of economic security for early intervention providers. The comptroller had the wisdom to predict the crisis, but unfortunately for New York families and working class providers, the governor did not have the wisdom to prevent the crisis despite having been warned. In 2020, the state of New York awarded a $43 million contract to Public Consulting Group, otherwise known as PCG, to implement their transition from the old system to the new system. PCG fundamentally failed to implement the transition despite having 4 years to do so, 4 years to set the stage for a smooth transition. And so we are calling on the governor to fix the broken system of early intervention here in New York, to radically reduce the workforce shortages and waiting lists, to stabilize working class providers with an 11% reimbursement rate increase, and to give cities like New York and give counties their fair share of funding for early intervention services. The governor broke early intervention in New York, and the governor must fix it. So with that said, I want you to hear directly from the early intervention providers who have been poorly served by our broken system.
I just want to thank Congressman Torres for listening to early intervention providers and for understanding the gravity and importance of this program, the devastating effects of long wait lists for our babies and toddlers. This is a critical period of development. I have been an EI provider for 30 years. I know I don't look it. Helping babies and toddlers learn to develop their play and their communication skills, and also helping them eat food and get off feeding tubes that they were dependent upon. The children we serve in early intervention often have severe delays and a myriad of diagnoses. We stay in early intervention because there is nothing that compares to watching a child eat their first bite of food, take their first steps, or say their first words. We celebrate with our families every accomplishment, no matter how big or small. We're often the first support system for these families, helping them cope with the challenges and providing them with the tools and the resources to help their children meet milestones that others just take for granted. I am advocating on behalf of all those children who need this critical program and have been placed on long wait lists or are experiencing delays in receiving all of the services they are entitled to. The reason for the shortage of early intervention providers in New York State is that we have been mistreated. Since I began my agency 20 years ago, we have had negligible pay increases, drastic cuts, and costs that rise exponentially. Many providers work tirelessly, endlessly to provide quality work and at the expense of their own families. We work long, hard hours, consulting families, supporting families outside of our regularly scheduled visits. Do not think for a minute we don't take our work home with us. How can we not? The providers in the counties have had the administrative burden of entering data into an unworkable system since October 15, 2024. The new system, the EI Hub, developed by Public Consulting Group, sets up roadblocks and prevents parents and counties from sharing information without delays. It prevents providers from billing and getting paid for services rendered. Public Consulting Group is an out-of-state company that was paid millions of New York State tax dollars for a data system with critical flaws. The company was not vetted, and they've had numerous lawsuits in other states demonstrating misconduct. During this launch, the company only allotted 8 people for their helpline for the entire state of New York, and then increased the amount to just 16 when the disaster unfolded. If I buy a computer and it doesn't work, I can take it back and get a refund. Where is our refund? In order to submit just one billable claim, 22 to 25 clicks. It's ridiculous. Many times these claims are rejected and we need to do it again. It is 2025. Computer systems should be intuitive instead of going in and out of different pages and repopulating the same information in different screens. The amount of time to bill for services unsuccessfully has been tremendously time-consuming. Many providers spend their entire weekend trying to figure out the life cycle of one claim. It is an accounting nightmare. During trainings back in March, I expressed my grave concern for this system to PCG and to the Bureau of Early Intervention, and I was told it was in the testing phases, and when it was up and running, it would be a smooth transition. This was a lie. I asked if providers would go without payment for almost 2 years, as that is the length of time it took for some to be paid in full when PCG took over as the state fiscal agent. During this transition time, many agencies and providers left the field, and the program never fully recovered. The Department of Health will state they're working on these fixes 3 months after the launch. We urge the Department of Health to be transparent. Why weren't these issues addressed during the testing phase? A spokesperson for Governor Hochul said software glitches have been addressed. But if somebody wanted to fact check this, they can definitely look at the Department of Health's weekly newsletters, listing the amazing amounts, the tremendous amounts of issues with this system still going on today. I personally have been riddled with guilt ceasing providing early intervention services, but that's exactly what I was forced to do. How many children and families will needlessly go without these services to help them? To make matters worse, on January 1st, 2025, Happy New Year's to us, a state plan amendment was issued and slated to go into effect immediately. The first part of this amendment was that a 5% increase passed in last year's budget would only go back to October 1st. Where are the funds allocated for providers in the budget? We have yet to see a penny. The second devastating blow in the same amendment contained drastic cuts to telehealth. Our telehealth providers work tirelessly. After learning and using telehealth during COVID, I can tell you it's not easy and it's not cheap. They should be greatly appreciated for their commitment to the children and families we serve. Teletherapy has been so valuable at allowing parents to fully participate and has been successful in providing them with the ability to help them meet their child's goals. This therapy is used when there's shortages in hard to access areas, high crime locations, urban areas, and rural settings. Sometimes some of our families are 45 minutes away. Parking in certain geographical locations is difficult or impossible. We use it in multilingual homes when families may not have access to providers who speak their primary language. And we also use this with medically fragile children when parents don't want them to be exposed to unnecessary germs. Over the past 30 years, I have seen the early intervention program undergo cuts, massive administrative burdens, excessive guidelines to adhere to, and no true increase in funding, and I have never contemplated leaving the field until now. That is how much I love and am passionate about the babies and toddlers we treat. To survive as an agency owner, I use a revolving line of credit to pay my staff in a timely manner due to delays in reimbursement. When I started, there were so many experienced therapists and seasoned clinicians to train the new graduates coming, but they're all leaving the field. We cannot afford to lose any more providers. These are skills that are not taught in an academic setting. If we do not help these children and families during this critical period of development, it will cause a devastating snowball effect into preschool, school age, and adulthood. You cannot skip developmental steps. An example would be just the simple step of crawling. Crawling helps develop balance, sensory systems, and developing core muscles. These same muscles are needed for efficient respiration, which helps with speech, attention, and self-regulation. These foundational abilities are imperative for success. Our advocacy efforts included a petition with more than 13,000 signatures, inundating the governor with numerous emails and an abundance of calls, and they were all met with deafening silence from Governor Kathy Hochul. These babies and toddlers may not be able to cast a ballot, but their families sure can, because this crisis touches every household. Even if you do not have a child with severe delays yourself, you may be a grandparent, a sibling, an aunt, or family friend. You may be a teacher who wished this child received these necessary services sooner. And there are amazing, caring, and qualified professionals that want to help these children, but nobody can work for free. Providers have families to support, and the reason for my initial call to Congressman Torres was the abundance of providers that were devastated because they were unable to get reimbursed for their services before the holiday, pay their mortgage, or put food on their table. It was heartbreaking to field these calls. Please fix early intervention, investigate PCG, and let's stand together to do better for the families of New York. Oh, sorry, Tracy Harris.
Good morning. First, I'd like to express my gratitude to Congressman Ritchie Torres and his entire team for their steadfast response and willingness to help providers, especially since he does not represent my district. While this is an amazing opportunity to be here, I should be in my socks sitting on the floor of my parent-toddler playgroup. Instead, I had to discontinue my group and advocate more broadly. The positive outcomes of early intervention are so impactful that it can literally change the trajectory of a baby's life. mine included. I was born with a neural tube defect, medically referred to as myelomeningocele, and more commonly known as spina bifida. The outcomes of this birth defect include the inability to walk, severe cognitive impairment, and sometimes requiring round-the-clock care. I didn't walk until I was 3 years old, and I had to wear leg braces, and took entirely too long to potty train. I also have ADHD and attentive type. Given all of that, I'm standing here today without assistance. I have 2 master's degrees, 4 teaching certifications, and in 2022, I completed my first 5K, aptly named Run for Your Life. It goes without saying, early intervention is effective, supportive, and successful in meeting the needs of babies and for supporting their caregivers when they are on an unexpected journey of developmental delays and disabilities. Given my success in early intervention, my desire to give right back to the EI community by providing services is an absolute dream come true. The most rewarding part of celebrating small achievements is that they become larger successes. Families are heavily involved, carrying over strategies, accessing community resources, and advocating for their babies in an unknown world that is not for the faint of the heart. When I started providing services in 2021, it almost felt natural to me. The provider community is so welcoming and supportive. The collaboration that goes on behind the scenes, from service coordination to transition, is nothing short of a Herculean effort. The friendships you form with colleagues will always have you coming back for more. Well, most of the time. All of the aforementioned things can't do one thing. They can't make a data system work so you can get paid. It leaves providers on the other side of advocacy, fighting for their finances, their careers, and with an administration and fiscal agent that in no uncertain terms seeks to destroy the very program that sets babies up for success. As I speak for myself, my goal is that it resonates across counties to other independent providers. Prior to the launch of the EI Hub in 2024, I attended both in-person and virtual trainings. I identified issues in billing during training and asked for those corrections to be made. When all of these things were unavailing, I also attended and engaged in public comment at the Early Intervention Coordinating Council meetings, insisted in joining the stakeholder group, constantly communicated with BEI and PCG, utilized one-to-one training sessions that were offered to me, and even met with the developer. Suffice to say, I have been the squeaky wheel. Our advocacy has also led to obtaining local legislative support. Last week, the Assembly hosted a press conference attended by 23 members of the GOP, where BEI and PCG were called out for the failed implementation. This is just more proof this is a bipartisan issue. The onus for this failure is on PCG. They have a history of failed contracts in other states, including lawsuits. One specifically in New Jersey in 2018, where the judge ruled in part that PCG could not use, train, or otherwise access the program for a period of 7 years. The Open New York website indicates that New York State and PCG entered this contract in 2019, full well knowing the contract was going to be stalemate until at least 2023. The announcement was made with the rollout for the EI Hub would commence in April 2024, and then delayed until October. In essence, they had 18 months and millions of dollars to create and implement an appropriate and functional system. In 2024, that should come easy, and as we are all well aware, it did not. This system is riddled with delays, rejections, potential HIPAA violations, and incomplete provider profiles. When you are directed to void a claim due to system error, you are essentially forced to choose a reason, none of which indicate system error as the cause. The response we receive is, "We are working on it. We have work to do, and we can delete that." All while providers go unpaid, services and delays babies are requiring evaluations are going unscheduled. Each time they attempt an update, a downstream impact occurs that creates additional issues, further delaying service and payment. The biggest impact is that this vastly flawed system is destroying the career that I've worked so very hard for. I will never accept that as fact, and I will hold those responsible that seek to cause irreparable harm to babies in need. PCG needs to claim responsibility to repair this failure of the system. We insist on change. We insist on an investigation into the contract and into PCG. Yesterday, BEI reported to the New York Post that the PCG was not getting paid until the software work is complete. However, the comptroller's website indicates that from September 10, 2024, there have been 25 payments made on this contract. If PCG and BEI can prove otherwise, then I will stand corrected. Until then, there are babies behind the data. Hey, Kathy Hochul, can you hear us now? Thank you.
Can you get your name?
Lacey
Last name.
Schweigert.